And I learned through working with executives is that, a lot of people in the working force, especially in corporate America, think, all these big executives have it all figured out all the time. They're these scary executives, but no, they don't have it figured out a whole lot. They're confident. They're confident in their not knowing. And they can do one thing that I really struggled with in anxiety, and that's be okay in uncertainty.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started. Okay, where are my introverts at? Where are my peeps who feel like imposter syndrome's got them down? I have this guest is for you. He's actually also just an incredible journey of his career and what he's gotten to, but we mostly just discuss like imposter syndrome and getting over yourself and living in uncertainty and not putting people on pedestals. Like this is like the thing. And so if you are someone who is like just really having a hard time, not worrying about being an introvert or having imposter syndrome, or even just like letting people intimidate you, where my people pleasers at, we got something there for you as well. So Ryan Lindner is our guest today. He is the author of A Half Known Life. And so we don't get too much into his book, but I'm very intrigued to read it. I'm actually really excited about it because he's had this incredible journey. And he said it was a 10-year journey for this book. So that's going to be a good one. I am incredibly overjoyed with what we talked about, and I really think it is a nice pep talk that you need on this day. So here is Ryan Lindner. All right, Be It Babes. I'm really excited because I know how much you guys like to talk about imposter syndrome. I know how many DMs I get about, oh my gosh, I wish I could do this, but like I just have so much imposter syndrome. And so when I actually found today's guest, I found out like he's actually someone who knows imposter syndrome really well and has managed to make an amazing life for himself, getting over it, and has an incredible book for us all to read. So Ryan Lindner is our guest today, and I'm just so excited. Can you tell everyone who you are and how you got here? What made you get into this whole role and go through this journey that you've been on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to chat about this. Growing up, introvert, super introvert, had just awful anxiety growing up. And I was drawn to, personal development, but pretty much anything I could sink my teeth in that would help me sort of move beyond that. It was just such a struggle for so many years. I mean, I remember giving talks when I was real young, and it would be so bad. I would like sweat through my shirt. It was like that bad. It looked like I took a shower. It was terrible.
I feel like a lot of people can go, yep, I know that.
And chronic worrier. And really struggled to find kind of where I fit in. Never did know what I wanted to do with my life, and tried to find somewhere where I might fit. And after about 1 million jobs, not too much of an exaggeration, but pretty close, I fell into coaching, and I didn't know that was actually a career option. Never knew that was a possibility, but I found out that I could empathize and sort of relate to people really well who were going through that. And that felt like, well, I can embrace this. Maybe I can turn that into something. Got an amazing contract and did coaching sessions for people all over the world, even worked for a federal contract, the military. And then I started working with organizations, really developing training content, leading trainings for major companies, building out their training departments, helping with their culture transformation, helping train managers so that they, most companies treat people like roles and not people.
Yeah.
And I would track things like turnover, how do you reduce turnover? So it grew and sort of progressed over the years into things that I would have never, ever guessed.
That is what an incredible journey. Like to go from like all these different, and like, oh, I'm coaching now. Now I'm coaching corporations. Now I'm coaching the military. Now I mean, like also like exciting. And I imagine like there were probably some moments you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so how did you get over, like, did you just outgrow the anxiety? Like, what was the journey there?
A lot of people think of anxiety, and this is just, my approach. And, a lot of my clients, when I tell them, hey, I'm a really anxious introvert, a lot of them would be very surprised because it doesn't seem like that. I've done speeches in front of executives and in front of, all kinds of people, generals, and, all kinds of, and a lot of people think that anxiety, introversion is something that has to be overcome or fixed. And that was what I always thought was, I read all the books. I need to do these things to overcome it. We always hear the advice like, picture people in their underwear or some kind of crazy advice. And none of that really worked for me. It was always still there, still had the physical symptoms, the sweaty palms, felt lightheaded at times, just terrible. Eventually, I started to think about it differently. I started to think about, what if it was something that didn't have to fix? And it took me quite a while, but it was a different mindset with it. In other words, like I think of it right now as I am truly, truly okay with however I show up.
Yeah.
However I show up, I love that person. Most of us treat ourselves way worse than we would treat people we love.
It's 1000%. I think I just want to highlight what you just said, because so many people that I work with, they're like, oh, I can't go up and just talk to a stranger because I'm an introvert. And I'm like, well, you are a shy person. You're an introvert because you actually gain energy being alone. And when they see it like that, it's like something that is hindering them. Like being an introvert is holding them back. But being an introvert doesn't actually have to be something you overcome or has to hold you back. It's just like how you are as a person in this world who gains energy to show up in this world. And so I love that you're like, I don't have to get over being an introvert. I can just be an introvert who also can do these things. Like it doesn't have to be an either or.
You're exactly right. Introverts aren't necessarily all shy. They just kind of we recharge our batteries a little bit differently. And, what might be exhilarating or energizing for an extrovert, it's draining for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I've got to have those boundaries in place.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what you really have to learn is not how to like overcome your introvertedness. It's like how to like say no. I mean, people don't believe that I'm an introvert when I say it. I'm like, well, I'm a very gregarious. That's what Brad calls me. I say high functioning. It's a world that we have to be an extrovert in. Like you have to go out and network. You have to put yourself out there. Like that's the way the world is. So how do I be that till I see it without changing who I am or thinking that my way of recharging is wrong? There's nothing wrong with that. So the other night we were at a networking event. Went to dinner with this other person and he's like, okay, I'm going to do something with him and I'll meet you at the party. I'm like, oh, we'll probably arrive at the same time because I'm going to sit here and order another drink and be by myself.
That's something I would totally do as well.
And I just sat and I just like the whole restaurant just looked because they just got up and I'm like, I'll have another drink here. And I sat there, I played a video game. I enjoyed myself. And then I was like, okay, I'm excited to go to this party now.
I also enjoy naps.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm a big fan of
that's
naps,
another good way.
Power naps.
Yeah. So like, so it's like, I think introverted anxiety and even like the imposter syndrome thing, people think I have to overcome that. But what if it, like what you said earlier, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is what I came to my mind. It's like, what if it just existed? Like, it's like, that's what I have right now. And I'm, how do I like, instead of overcoming it, it's more of like, this is a sign of who I am or that I care about something or that something's important to me. Like, that's why we have feelings of imposter syndrome or maybe even some feelings of anxiety. So we actually care about the things that we're doing.
I think the imposter, we feel like we're somehow diminished because I'm an introvert and I should be an extrovert. But, once I love that person now and I was truly okay, truly feeling like I was okay, however I show up, then some of that anxiety does dissipate on its own. So like, even if I would be sweating or, be red as a tomato, I would just, make a joke of it or like kind of laugh at it almost like, I decided to take a shower right before this and, I just left my clothes on. But, you know, I think it humanizes you and people in the audience can relate to that
Yes.
and it disarms them and it makes them laugh. It's an icebreaker.
Well,
So
it's also like when I was taking a class on like doing a keynote speech, they said like start your speech with something self-deprecating. It makes people like you.
I love it.
And
Absolutely.
I'm like, really self-deprecating? But basically like by you saying, I decided to take a shower with my clothes on before I walked in here, like what, like it actually makes people stop looking at that and going, it actually just like, and everyone laughs and then you've caught their attention. So now they're all listening to anyway. So it's actually like your superpower is that you sweat through your shirt before you speak.
Absolutely.
So, okay, you got into this coaching thing and then it just kept growing and growing. How, what was that like for you? How did you put yourself out there to get more clients? Was it after this like realization that you can just be an introvert with anxiety and like, it's going to be okay. And then how did that lead you to like writing a book? Like, what was that journey like?
Well, the journey for the book was about 10 years. So I guess better late than never. But it really, I had some things that occurred health-wise when I first started that contract. I actually had a couple cardiac arrests. And so, that's not too good for someone with anxiety because that kind of makes it a little bit
took
worse.
You to the next level. It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah. So I had just started what I would call my dream job at the time. I had this amazing contract. I had clients from all over the place. I had psychologists as clients, and I was there for about a month. And I suddenly just dropped dead one day. Like I had this like cardiac arrest, no family history, nothing like that. And I was back at work 5 days later, working with clients because I had a financial need.
Yeah.
I
understand
I had to
that.
pay time off. It was 1 month there. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hooked to all these wires and I'm doing these virtual sessions. Most of them were on the phone, so they couldn't see. That was, hooked to all these wires and stuff. And man, it really transformed my sessions though. Having gone through that, it just totally made me rethink what I'm actually worried about. And it helped in a very weird way.
Mm-hmm. That's so fascinating. And I hate that you had to go back, but I understand the world we live in. Like sometimes you just don't have the luxury of actually recovering from your cardiac arrest. You have to be back in action. And so, but also like to go through that and it helps you rethink. I think I don't think we have to go through a cardiac arrest, y'all, to rethink like what are we actually worried about. Like I think we can actually learn from Ryan's life. And that one we can live vicariously through.
Yeah, and I had one, and then the next day I had another. Just to and it just totally like
a nice little aftershock to the system.
Absolutely. And I had the paddles and everything, and to this day, it's over a decade later. I have I was young, collegiate athlete, no family history, and again, just a random event, and I got a pacemaker, and but one thing that I have to do, which is interesting for someone who's had anxiety for many years, is the boundaries. I have to have boundaries. If I don't, I'm dizzy 24/7.
Yeah.
So if I don't have my boundaries in place or manage my energy well, then I get really sick.
Yeah. So can we talk about that? Because I'm like obsessed with my boundaries, and like my whole team, their whole job is just to like protect the boundaries that I have in place. And well, at least that's my assistant's job. And then when people I'm like, you did not go through the channels. Now you're breaking. But like not every boundaries are a muscle. And I'm sure one that was really hard for you to even put in place, to even think about what boundaries you need to not feel guilty doing it. Like there's a whole host of emotions. Like, and we also train people how to treat us. So if we never have had boundaries and then we have to start putting them in place, then people are like, wait, where is this coming from? So what was your boundary journey like? And do you have any tips for those of us who are trying to get better at it?
Well, a lot of people I've worked with, especially those with anxiety, they're people pleasers. And that's exactly what I was. I thought that my self-worth and my value came from, getting approval and feeling, and that's part of what was, the anxiety and the stage fright and all that was, oh my gosh, what if I screw this up? Low self-esteem and so forth. So, um, having boundaries means you have to say no more, but some relationships also fall away. Maybe they're toxic relationships, toxic jobs. I work a lot with people who are going these like career, transitions as well. And also working with companies. I really understand that dynamic, and it's really having to detach from that in some ways. That's not where your worth comes from. You have no control over outcomes or what other people think of you. You have to love you,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to, again, kind of own who that person is.
God, Ryan, you have to repeat that for everybody one more time. So you like, I'll rewind this, or here it is. You just said it. Like we cannot control how people think about us, and saying yes and people pleasing is you trying to control how people think about you. But guess what? Just because you said yes to the thing doesn't mean that you're controlling how they think about you or feel about you. And so you actually have to really like own what you want, as you said, and like really like who you are and be okay with that. And then you put the boundaries out there, and the right people are going to be in your life because they're going to respect that. And then thank goodness the bad ones can fall away. Like, thank goodness. We have a lot of people who are business owners here. And recently in my coaching group, one of them was like, how do I fire a client? And, what I wanted to say was like, well, if you have strict boundaries in place from the get-go, you would never have to do that. Because like they wouldn't get through the filter, or like it'd be really hard for them. But what happens is sometimes we like say yes to people in our businesses because we're trying to grow them. We like need more clients right away. So we bring people in, we're just saying yes. And like, oh, then we have that person who like steps on all the boundaries, breaks all the rules, and we don't want to upset them. So we like kind of let it slide, or we just go, oh, hey, don't do that. We like aren't really clear on what those boundaries are. So they're just being themselves, and we're not actually putting fences up that they can actually see. We're just like expecting them to behave in a certain way. And then you end up having to fire someone because like you just get to a point where you're like, are you kidding? I can't work with you anymore. And so like, the best thing to do is like to never have to fire a friend, a client, a coworker, anything like that, is just to like really own what you need to be the best in what you're doing, and then be okay with sometimes that'll make people disappointed in you.
You define that relationship from the beginning. You set
Mm-hmm.
that precedent, and I know firsthand. If you've worked with someone a long time and you've set a precedent of sort of bad habits, it's so hard to get that back on track. Some people, you can't convince anyone of anything. They have to come to that sort of on their own. It's, some relationships you will have to let go, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said earlier that the book journey was 10 years. I think that that's probably fast for most people's first. What made you want to write a book? What made you think that like, I want to get this message out there? What was that whole conversation and journey like?
The book is called The Half Known Life, and it's not a typical self-help where it's like you only live once kind of thing. It's from a quote from Moby Dick, which has to do with like not being able to see ourselves. So we can't always, and I come back to, I've had, again, like first time I had a psychologist as a client, I was kind of like confused because I thought they were supposed to have it all figured out. Like I like, why are they working with me? And then I had these executives, people that I thought, wow, these people, and this ties really well into imposter syndrome too, because I learned just a ton from working with these people. But I realized that, you know what? That's all we are. We're all just people. No matter how smart you are, you could be brilliant. We can't see ourselves. And I learned through working with executives is that, a lot of people in the working force, especially in corporate America, think, all these big executives have it all figured out all the time. They're these scary executives, but no, they don't have it figured out. a whole lot. They're confident. They're confident in their not knowing. They're confident. And they can do one thing that I really struggled with in anxiety, and that's be okay in uncertainty. Be okay in uncertainty, work in uncertainty. They can live in that.
Yeah.
And because they trust themselves, I might not have it all figured out right now, but I trust that I will do what I need to do at the appropriate time. They trust that.
Yeah. So is that something that you have learned how to do, is to like trust in yourself, through this journey, like that you might not know all the answers, but you'll be fine. You'll get yourself through it.
I do feel like that. I also feel like, I'm comfortable saying I don't know something. If I don't know, I don't know. It has no bearing on my value. As a leader with companies, I try to, I tell people that all the time, don't know everything, don't have it all figured out, but I'm open. I am open to being better. I look at it more as like a continuous thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think first of all, we will never know everything. You will always be learning. There's always going to be a question that you couldn't ever like predict was going to happen. And because everyone's coming at the same thing that you're doing with a different perspective. And so the more you can be okay with like, oh, I don't know, or, oh, let me get back to you, the easier it is for you to be present in the moment of the life that you're in. Because if you are so worried that you're not going to know the right answer, you're so busy thinking that I have to know all the right answers, you're not actually able to be confident and comfortable in the position you're in. So I think that that's so true. You mentioned like they are comfortable in the uncertainty, and that's so hard for humans though. We want to know. We want to know how it's going to end. That's why we skip to the end.
One thing I do a lot, and I work with clients, is in any situation, I ask myself, what do I actually know? What do I actually know about the situation? So, about a week ago, I gave this huge talk, and I remember like 10, 15 minutes prior to the talk, a lot of, people all over the country on it. And I was like feeling those symptoms again, like, oh my God, like, what am I even doing? But you know what? I just said, what? Do I ever really bomb? We all bomb on occasion, but like, is it ever as bad as I think it is? And I thought, you know what? It's not. In most situations, the stakes are pretty low.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? And I just said, you know what? I'm going to do this like I always do, and I did. And I just became comfortable in the symptoms and didn't try to, again, wish they weren't there or overcome them. I just said, you know what? I'm going to accept that I feel this way. I'm good with it. I took a deep breath, and I was just a person. That's it. We always try to be this like, get everything right and all that. I was just a person just like they are. And I talked to them just like other people. And it's as simple as that.
I think that so I love that you say that, because first of all, going back to your psychologist client, like I think that we'll have people in our lives like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they want to work with me, or I can't believe that they want to talk with me. And we've got this thing like they've got it all figured out. That psychologist knows everything. He knows the whole thing. Like what can I possibly teach him? And it's like, oh, actually so much, because he can't see himself. And I think, we don't give ourselves enough credit. If the person has said, yes, they want to work with you already, they're saying, I think you know more than me on this topic.
And also, we don't know those people. It's all assumptions. It's all stories that we've created in our mind about who they are based on what, a title and their whatever. So you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be able to help them in some way. You have to know more than them about something.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
I had one of the top like orthopedic surgeons came in to take a session for me. And I was like, oh my God, this person knows more about the body than I could ever know. Like, they're an orthopedic surgeon. Like they know everything, right? Top and the best in the field. And I'm teaching him, and I'm like, he doesn't actually know what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying lift your arms, and like they're not they're like flailing, right? And it's like, oh, he knows everything about how to work, how everybody's body should work. But he doesn't know how to work his body in the way I'm asking him to do it. And so it like made me go, just teach him like every other human being, whoever lays down here, he just happens to know the anatomical terms of his knee joints and his shoulder joints. And so I can maybe use that.
Yeah, that doesn't mean he knows everything or he's got it all figured out. And that's the case with almost. I was when I was a provider and I was coaching a lot, I also worked with a marriage and family therapist, and I ran into him in the hallway, and I said, "How you doing?" And he said, "Oh, about to go in a session with this couple right after I just had a fight with a wife." And I just thought, just a person, just a person, like the rest of us. And but I think having that outside perspective is you just can't see yourself. So
Yeah. Yeah. And also like giving like space and grace to ourselves, because we're, like you said at the beginning of our conversation, like we are so hard on ourselves. We're not like, not in any moment you're like, has hard on this psychologist, marriage family counselor as you are on yourself. And it's like the more we can actually just be courteous of that judgment of others to ourselves, and then also take people off this pedestal that we keep putting them on, because we can't show up as our full self and have these amazing ideas if we just keep putting people up on pedestals just because of the alphabet behind their name or who we think that they are or who said they were, whatever it is. It's like, if we actually just treat everyone like they're an actual human being, we'll probably learn that we have more in common with people that intimidate us or cause us to have imposter syndrome than we don't.
if you didn't know someone's title, if you didn't know anything about them, it'd be a lot more relaxed conversation. If someone just walked up and said, "Hi, I'm Paul," or whatever, "Nice to meet you," you would talk to them like a regular person. If you found out they were some famous something, suddenly that dynamic, changes. So a lot of that is, again, you're totally right. It's just that sort of story, why me? Why can I do this? I'm no one. It's all comes back to that, self dialogue. And once you realize that you don't have to arrive to a particular place or become anyone, you have to more allow it or just be a person, because you're going to have something to offer that the other person doesn't, and that's all you need. It reminds me of Patrick Stewart, who I love. He had this, he's getting interviewed one time, and he shared this like mantra that he uses because he's been in like theater, TV, movies, and he shared this mantra, and I thought, wow, I mean, he must never get nervous because he's been doing it for decades. And he said, "No, I still get nervous. I still get like stage fright and all that." I thought that was really, and so I'm waiting for this mantra, like it's like profound, like. And he said, "You know what? You know what I do before I go on stage? I just tell myself, I don't give an F." And of course he does. Of course he cares, right? But there's something freeing about saying that, I think. When you say that, I don't care anyway, you do, of course, care,
Yeah.
but you have detached from the outcome in that moment.
Yeah.
And reduce the stakes. When you're in front of an audience that, you're looking at all these faces, but most introverts do well. They do well one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can treat the audience and just look at them as, talk to them like one person, look at one person, talk to them like one person. And the stakes aren't as high as you think,
Yeah.
And even Patrick Stewart, I just thought that was hilarious.
I always love finding out what those things are, because they're never what you expect them to be. They're not this like complicated thing. They're really often not. We build these things up like when I'm ready. You're never going to feel ready. Like you're just, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there, but I really don't think I've ever felt ready to start anything that I've actually cared about.
No way. Like people are waiting for the stars to align, and like I need to feel ready. Yeah, you're totally right. Or they need to have everything figured out, but that comes back to the uncertainty. You need to be okay with that. The best thing to do is just go in and learn, and then always adjust, always pivot. And none of it has any bearing on your value, and you're learning. Approach it kind of as a learner.
Yeah. Oh, if we could just approach everything as a learner. All right, I want to hear more, but we're gonna take a brief break, find out where people find you, follow you, get your book and your beit action items. Okay, Ryan, you have this amazing book. Where can people find it? What can they learn from it? And where can they work more with you?
They can go to my website, rslindner.com, halfknownlifebook.com as well. They can also find me on Amazon.
We'll have all those in the show notes. All right, before I let you go, because you've given us so many great things to think about, and I know all of our peeps who tend to let the imposter syndrome get in the way. I just love that you talked about the uncertainty and all of that already. But what bold, executable, intrinsic, targeted steps can people take to be it till they see it?
I would say, number one, own who you are. Own it. There's nothing you have to become or do, or you don't have to arrive to anything. You just allow it. Just practice in front of people, practice speaking, put your stuff on camera, record it, just practice it. And again, just however you show up, own it.
Amazing. Yes. I hope that everyone starts doing that more and more and more, because every single one of you is listening to this as something to offer this planet, and you're keeping it for yourself, which I think is pretty selfish whenever you don't put it out there and you let imposter syndrome or not having it figured out get in the way. Ryan, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hear how everyone loves it, what their takeaways are. Y'all tag Ryan Lindner, tag the Beit Pod, and also go get his book at the halfknownlife.com, halfknownlifebook.com.
halfknownlifebook.com.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Until next time, everyone, be it till you see it.
That's all I got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Be It Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day.
Be It Till You See It is a production of the Bloom Podcast Network.
It's written, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Kroll.
It is produced and edited by the epic team at Disenyo.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to Melissa Solomon for creating our visuals and Samena Velazquez for our transcriptions.
Also to Angelina Herrico for adding all the content to our website, and finally to Meredith Crowell for keeping us all on point and on time.